Howdy, and welcome back to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits. Today we're going to be looking at a KB Sopwith Triplane. KB's a new maker in our channel, and I'm going to give you a little background on KB. But first, this Sopwith Triplane is part of their collector series. It's in 1/48 scale. It was first issued in 1972 under this KB label. It's an original tool from Aurora from 1963, and the model stock number is 1100-170. So this was a $1.70 kit back in 1972. So K&B was formed by a couple of gentlemen by the name of John Broadbeck and Lud Kading. In July of 1944. These guys were working together in some machine shops. They'd met in the 30s, had a mutual interest in model airplanes, and so they would go flying together. They ended up working in some machine shop in LA at the same time, and they decided that they wanted to start making model airplane engines for the modeler market. And so they formed the K&B company to generate enough money to be able to get capital and start making model engines. So with a couple of old lathes and a drill press and a garage, they were taking any job that they could for machining. So they were making cannon yokes for Lockheed. They made some precision parts for the Manhattan Project, which developed the first atomic bomb. So after they had been doing that for a little bit in 1946, they'd gotten enough money to start developing their own engines. So their first one was a .29 engine, which they named the Torpedo. The Torpedo was a famous engine pre-war, and the name had gotten sold off to another gentleman, and they ended up buying that name from him, so they labeled their engine the Torpedo. They continued to produce a number of other flying model engines. Later on, they got involved in slot cars as well. In 1955, they merged with a company called Allyn, A-L-L-Y-N. They were known for making manufacturer's display models for the aviation industry. Then at one point they became owned by Nabisco briefly. And that got sold off to Aurora. Not sure exactly when that occurred, but it was sometime in the mid to late 60s. Aurora was also producing slot cars as well. So I guess they kind of saw that as a merge of those two companies. Eventually KB became acquired by a company called Veco. I think that occurred when Aurora went belly up, and so the KB division was spun off and purchased by Veco, and they in turn sold it to Leisure Products. And KB still exists today. They moved out to Arizona for a while and ended up back in California. So that's some of the information I was able to locate on them. So this KB label was they did produce a series of their World War I aircraft under this label, and they jointly issued these the same time that they issued the same type of box with new artwork through Aurora, Canada. So I'm not sure if this originated from the Aurora, Canada product, and then they just labeled it as KB to sell in the United States, or if it was vice versa. So if anybody's got any information about that and knows a little bit more about it, it'd be greatly appreciated if you could put that in the comment section. But if you see on the side here, it does have KB Manufacturing as a division of Aurora. So the box itself, you got some really nice artwork here that's done by Joe Amendola. Did all this 72, 73 issue KB artwork and the Aurora, Canada artwork from that same period. In a little bit of a different type of a box, of a square box, as opposed to the usual Aurora long skinny boxes. And then on the side here, you've got a profile of the aircraft being depicted, your number for ordering, a little bit of information, detailed cockpit, machine gun, pilot, mechanic, authentic markings, and rigging instructions. This side has a little bit of a history on the Sopwith triplane and specifics about the markings that are on here. Same thing on this side. Paint cement not included, and a repeat of the other side. Nothing on the bottom. This was still a taped together box. And let's see what we got inside. So the box was still a hard box with a litho glued around it. And the bottom is a folding box base. Then we have our instruction sheet with KB and then a division of Aurora products. And here's the Downey address. Pretty extensive bit of information about the triplane, a little bit of history on it, some pretty good specifications on it. And some tips on building models, stuff about the FS standard paints. Here's some more about KB again. Start with assembly of the fuselage, the rotary engine, a little bit of a cockpit, the lower wings and tail surfaces, showing you to add 1/8 of an inch dihedral when you're putting the lower wings on. They're just being held on by, it looks like, a couple of pins. If you're going to be doing a rigging, you need to drill out some holes and drill out the holes for rigging on the wings as well. There's your undercarriage, and finally your upper wings and assembling the undercarriage onto the fuselage. And here's the rigging guide. And final assembly, which is putting it on the included base, throwing your figures on, and a little button on the front with the aircraft name. Then we have a foreview of the paint scheme, some more color information, including the Federal Standard colors, the FS numbers. And that's your instructions. So the decals that come with it, still pretty decent shape, a little bit of yellowing. These are for a specific aircraft, N5492, Black Maria. Color seems a little bit faded out. I don't think the blue on World War I markings was that quite a light blue. I think they're a little darker. But this particular aircraft is from number 10 Squadron, Royal Naval Air Service, part of B Flight, which was also known as Black Flight. All the aircraft in Black Flight had black painted noses, tails, wheel covers, and this particular one, Black Maria, was by the flight leader by the name of Raymond Collishaw, nicknamed Collie. He was Canadian, born in 1893, November 22nd. He's the highest scoring Royal Naval Air Service ace in World War I with a total of 60 victories, and he's the second highest scoring Canadian ace. After the war, he took on a permanent commission and ended up seeing action against the Bolsheviks in Russia in 1919-1920. Then during the Second World War, he commanded 204 Group in North Africa, which became the Desert Air Force. And he ended up retiring during the war in 1943, and he died in September 28th of 1976 at the age of 82. Excuse me. The Sopwith Triplane when it started with the Royal Naval Air Service and got into France. In the first couple of months, that B flight was able to down 84 German aircraft in the first couple of months. So this particular one here, the N542, was the first triplane that he received. I was not able to source a photograph of that one, but he eventually got a replacement one that had, it was one of 6 experimental triplanes that had 2 Vickers guns instead of the single one. And that one was serial numbered N533, and it was also painted similarly with the Black Maria on it, but it had a large C painted on the fuselage, and representing, Collishaw. And there is some photographic evidence of that one, so I'll show you that here. So a little quick bit of information on the Sopwith triplane for those of you who aren't very familiar with it. The Sopwith triplane was the first triplane in military service. It was a development from the Sopwith pup. Its first flight was 28 May of 1916 and began entering service with the Royal Naval Air Service in early 1917. It was a very effective aircraft. The purpose of going to a triplane was to try to get more maneuverability and lift from the same engine, and it was very successful at that, and it really made a big impression on the Germans, how quickly it dominated them, so much so that they ended up making 40 some odd, I believe, triplane experimental aircraft, and that ultimately led to the famous Fokker DR-1 triplane. But the Sopwith triplane didn't last very long in service. They only built 147. Shortly after this aircraft went into service, the Sopwith Camel ended up coming out, which was much more powerful. Had 2 guns on it. Was easier to be serviced. The Sopwith triplane apparently was extremely difficult to service. Replacing any kind of parts in the fuselage or doing any kind of repair work on it was very challenging. So it did not last very long, but the few that were out, did a pretty good job for the short time that they were around, and made quite an impression. So pretty interesting aircraft. And there's 2 originals that are still in existence. One is actually in Russia, one that had been sent there for trials, somehow survived, and it's in the Russian Museum. And another one is still in the RAF Museum in London. There's a few reproductions that have been made. A couple of those I think are still flying, but only 2 originals are left. So let's take a look at our kit here. And we'll look at the fuselage house here first. So we've got a little bit of raised panel lining on here. You can see that the cowling is just completely blended into the fuselage. Not much representation of fabric on the rear here. A little bit of lines across the top. And let's see the fit. Even though there's no stand included with it, it does still have the slot for the stand from the Aurora days. So the fit's not too bad. Across fuselage, a little bit of filling would be needed in here. But down here you can see the molding is starting to really kind of show its age from here. So by this time it's about 10-year-old kit. So the molds are starting to go on it. That's your fuselage. And this tree here has the upper wing, which, typical of Aurora kits from the 60s, has molded on markings for the roundels. Here's your interplane struts, a couple of them. Looks like the engine mounting. It's the underside. A number of these World War I kits, the undersides of the wings on these Auroras were invariably flat, but this one actually has got some dimension to it, representation of the fabric covering, maybe a little exaggerated, but at least there's something on there. And here are your, let's see, I think this would be, here's your lower wings. Yeah, these are the ones that were held on by the pins. And got representation of the ailerons with some lines. Those are raised lines, and a little nub there for the mechanism, and again molded on markings and continuation of that fabric covering. And here's your middle wings, same thing again. And the ailerons again are just represented by raised lines. There's your horizontal tail plane. Similar again, you do have ejector pin marks on there. It does look like they're on the bottom though, which is a little bit better. And similar representation on the fabric. And again, just a raised line for the elevators. There we go. And, oh, interesting, I forgot to show you. The inside of here, you've got Aurora and KB stamped on the inside. And then ejector pin moldings. Let's see if there were any on the wing. Yeah, there's very faint ones on the outside here on the top wing. Very faint right there. But they are on the bottom side, which is a better place to put them. Some thought went into that. There's your rudder, very simple. Raised lines again to represent rudder striping and the rudder itself. And there's what you got for a rudimentary seat. And let's see, here we got your instrument panel. And just a few circles. Let's give you something. And the rest of these beige parts are the pilot and ground crew guy. Very nice little guys. Do have a huge sinkhole. Not the best place to have a hole. And it looks like he's walking out to his plane. This guy may be climbing up, starting it. What's interesting is you do get two colors of plastic in the molding. So some of these other parts are in this darker brown. Control yoke, tail skid, your prop, your wheels. There's that little button with the name. There's your rotary engine. That's not too bad. So the front side of it's got a fair amount of detail. It's front side of your propeller. There we go. So not too bad. Here's your Vickers machine gun. That's fairly well represented. And pilot seat. Got a little bit of something on the seat itself. Maybe make it look like a little wicker or something. And your axle. And the pin for the propeller. And finally, this is a unique thing about this KB and also the Canadian kit, that they came with these vacuum form bases, molded in the brown color, so that you could display the aircraft on something other than just, you know, the table or the shelf. Give you a little bit of extra dimension. So that may be why, you know, they switched to the square box to accommodate something like this. I do have a couple others of these KBs, so when we look at them, we'll see if, you know, it's the same base on all of them, or if they had different bases for the different kits. It's something a little different to have. So that is about it for this kit. As I mentioned before, this was originally issued by Airfix in 1963 in a regular kind of long box, and And there's a Aurora Canada issue of that long box in 64. And then you've got this 1972 KB release, and then there was the Aurora Canada version of this kit in 1973. And there was one other issue from them in, I think it was 1974, with the long box again, back from Aurora. So there's really only one other 48 scale triplane that I could see, and that was one done by Edward. There's a few 72nd scale ones, Renwall and Revell, had some out in the 60s. So the triplanes is an aircraft that there's not a lot of kits out there, so this would be probably a pretty good start for somebody who wants to build a nice looking plane now and doesn't want to spend the money on an Edward kit. This is a good alternative to it. So that's it for today. If you've built one of these, either the Aurora version, or if you've had some of these KBs, let us know about it in the comment section. If you got one of these sitting on your shelf, want to take a picture of it, send it in for our next viewer build video, that'd be fantastic. Well, that's it for today. Thanks very much for watching, and have yourself a great rest of your day.